Hi, everyone. Amy here, host of Create Magic at Work. Before you listen to today's episode, I have some exciting news to share with you. Finding Treasures in the Trash began right here as a special mini-series inside Create Magic at Work, and it has taken on a life of its own. The depth, the truth, and the way Cari invites people into places we normally avoid has resonated so deeply with listeners. So what you're going to hear today is an exciting new beginning. Cari Jacobs-Crovetto is officially spinning Finding Treasures in the Trash into its own independent show, and it will now live inside the Magic Thread Media Network, the podcast network I created to be a home for this kind of work. Magic Thread Media is a new kind of podcast network. It's a curated home for conscious voices, thought leaders, healers, edgewalkers, and creators who are weaving wisdom, depth, and humanity into their work. Finding Treasures in the Trash is one of the very first shows launching inside this network, and it could not be more perfect, because what Cari does so beautifully is take us into the places that were never meant to stay hidden and show us how much power and freedom lives there. I'm excited that everyone is able to continue this journey with Cari. Follow and listen to Finding Treasures in the Trash as its own newly formed podcast on the Magic Thread Media Network. You can find the link to the trailer in the show notes and on all your favorite podcast platforms. And with that, let's grab our gloves and go digging with Cari as she shares this powerful message to all of you about this exciting new start. Hey, it's Amy from Create Magic at Work. We all have parts of ourselves and experiences that once felt unwelcome, unsafe to express, or deeply misunderstood. So we buried them. We're about to go treasure hunting in the places you were taught to avoid. This episode is part of a special mini-series called Finding Treasures in the Trash, hosted by executive coach and creator of Inner Truth Work, Cari Jacobs-Crovetto. Cari brings decades of corporate leadership and deep spiritual practice to guide high-achieving, soul-seeking humans through the process of reclaiming the parts of themselves they've cast aside. Through raw conversations and profound truth work, each episode invites you to turn toward what you've disowned and begin integrating it back into the whole, beautiful human that you are. Because your treasure doesn't always live in the light. Sometimes it's buried in the trash. Grab your gloves, Cari lead the way. Let's dig through this trash.
This is Cari Jacobs-Crovetto. Thank you so much for joining me on Finding Treasures in the Trash, a 12-episode mini-series nesting under Create Magic at Work. If you like what you hear, I'm offering you a special 5-day meditation series called 5 Days to Truth. It's the beginning practice of what we're talking about here on Finding Treasures in the Trash. You can also follow me on Instagram, or you can find me at my website, bravedirections.com. Thank you so much for listening. Hi, everyone. It's Cari Jacobs-Crovetto from Finding Treasures in the Trash. And I am so excited to jump on today. This will be a short one. I'm just here to tell you some very exciting news, which is some of you may know that this podcast, Finding Treasures in the Trash, appeared and has appeared as a mini-series on Create Magic at Work, which is a podcast hosted by Amy Lynn Durham. And as a result of our success and as a result of the quality of the episodes we've had on, I'm getting my own show. So I'll still be doing Finding Treasures in the Trash. I'm very excited about it. It's not a new show in the sense that we've only had 6 episodes and there's so much to unpack with this topic. But I will be spinning off. I will no longer be nested under Create Magic at Work. I will be my own show, independence. And the other exciting news is I will also be moving to a new network. And this is really exciting because it is not only am I moving to a new network, but it is a newly created network, and it's called Magic Thread Media. And the mission of Magic Thread Media is really to be a network of voices, of podcasters and guests who are weaving consciousness and conscious voices into all of the podcasts in different ways, whether it's a business podcast or more of a literary podcast or a spiritual podcast, to weave these conscious voices together to create a more connected world. And so we all have that in common. And I'm so excited to be debuting Finding Treasures in the Trash as one of the very first podcasts that will appear on Magic Thread Media. So I just kind of felt like I should do a quick recap on things I've personally taken away from my time as your host and things I'm learning and where we're going to go from here. So I think back to the first few podcasts, which is really where I was telling my story. It was the first time I told my story in the public in the way that I did. So I talked about my anxiety and my panic attacks as sort of the doorway to my own life's work and my own practice, and as my glide path to meditation, and how that then kind of unfolded into, for me, the practice of what I now call inner truth work. And I have really been trying to define a little bit more solidly, what is inner truth work. And so a big piece of this sort of honorable close that we're doing of having Finding Treasures in the Trash appearing on Create Magic at Work and moving it to Magic Thread Media, part of the process for me has really been to define some of what's magically come out of guest mouth and my mouth, because God knows some things just fly out of there. And I've really been playing a lot with ChatGPT and asking ChatGPT, what are you hearing? What are you hearing in my podcast? What are you hearing in my writing and my posts? And man, did it come back with some really great just reflection. And so I thought I would share a couple of key quotes that I had said at different times that my friend in AI picked up. And the first one I thought was really hit me in the heart, which is truth cannot be accessed from the parts of us that are invested in looking good, being right, or staying safe. I'm going to say that one more time. Truth cannot be accessed from the parts of us that are invested in looking good, being right, or staying safe. And so much of what we talk about with shadow work is looking into the places that we've disowned, the experience we've disowned, the emotions we don't want to feel, so that we can kind of keep a handle on things, right? That we can continue to posture and look how we want to look, that we can feel safe, and that we can appear like we've got it right. And truth, as it says, it can't be accessed from those parts of us. It's a deeper way that we're entering into a relationship with ourselves, where we unpack the pieces of us that maybe we were told weren't right or good or safe. So that I felt like was the first kind of truth nugget that came out of this reflection I've been doing as I kind of make this transition. The second one, which I love as much, is inner truth work reframes shadow as truth that adapted in order to survive. Truth that adapted in order to survive. So rather than this being some shadowy, weird thing that lives in the treasure trove, as we talk about, and we unpack it, this is really a way that our own truths had to be resilient and had to change in order for us to make it in the world to the point that we are today. And now we have this opportunity to really unpack that. And why do we unpack it? What is it? What's the meaning behind all this? And I think as I look and I replayed all the episodes before, I kind of broke this into 4 areas. Why does the truth get frozen in time? Why does it kind of have to adapt? Why does it have to shape shift or hide? And the first question of why does the truth go underground is that, we didn't feel safe. Our expression wasn't safe. The way we were in certain particular instances weren't safe. Our needs weren't confirmed, or any power that we were able to garnish or grab onto was punished. Maybe like me, I was a very dramatic, sensitive kid that was really misunderstood and shamed by my father in particularly. Or maybe our desire conflicts with our belonging. That can be sexuality. that can be with what it is we feel like naturally we want in our lives, but that the world is telling us isn't right. So there's lots of reasons why the truth goes underground. The second kind of piece of why the truth gets kind of frozen or frozen in time and we need to thaw it out is this idea that the ways in which we're telling ourselves subconsciously, there's this data that is kind of unclaimed. And this can be like disowned parts or emotions, pieces of ourselves that we know are not welcome and that we push back, or unacceptable desires, or shame-laden memories, contradictory impulses, or old survival strategies that still work until they don't. This is sort of data that's coming up that's telling us like, hey, as Ram Dass says, like, knock, 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 knock. It's coming forward in different ways, but we're kind of shoving it down or pushing it back. And what happens is over time, as these frozen truths continue to stay like, back in the freezer, we can have it can leak. It can leak into our behavior. It drives patterns that we can't explain. It shows up as over control or collapsing into our emotions or compulsive competence. That's one of my favorites, right? This sort of way in which we hold on to control by thinking we're right. That is certainly one I am definitely guilty of, right? This idea that I know more, or I know more than, and I'm going to tell you how competent I am. Or distorted perception under pressure, right? Where, I always say to my clients, like, is there a third truth here? Because we can have a perception that things are either this and that, and there's no room for a new third truth to come forward when we're under that kind of pressure. So I'm sure there's other ways that this idea of truth that's been put on ice is operating and sneaking into our world, our behavior, our ways of being. And then without doing this work, and this is really important here, without doing inner truth work, without looking and examining and doing some self-realization and self-awareness work, our values can become performative, right? Because they kind of become staid, or we become almost like as if our brains go into a certain racetrack pattern. And even though we sound like we have these high values, we're really not examining them with new truth all the time. And our truth, by the way, shape shifts constantly. We think it shouldn't, like truth should be static, but the world isn't static. And we have to shift how we relate to it all the time. And when we don't, our values kind of become like, okay, here's the routine of me again. Our insights become self-justification. That is so important, right? In Buddhism, we talk about beginner's mind. And it's really hard for us to have new insight and new ways of seeing things when we're only justifying our ego or justifying who we think we are. Our presence becomes managed. So it's not real presence. I see this all the time in my meditation classes where there's like this performative presence. It's presence coming from the brain, not presence coming from presence itself, because the presence becomes managed because we're pushing back so many disowned parts or even some disowned experiences or emotions that the presence can come forward with its true authenticity. And our spiritual language, our spiritual self can really become diminished or bypassed, right? Because there's these conditions that we're stuck in and we're not thawing out the totality of who we are. And so I think, like, honestly, my friend ChatGPT really has helped me to make a crucial distinction, which is that inner truth work really has two components to it: coherence and congruence. Coherence is everything looks aligned, like everything about me, because I've done the examination, looks aligned. And congruence is nothing essential is disowned. And I've talked about in the first 2 episodes of this podcast that when we are not looking at our shadow, or we're not looking at the truth, people see it anyway. People feel it anyway. So with this work, there's a way in which, coherence and congruence. We feel like we're in integrity. We feel like we're in alignment. We're more believable. And when I'm sure we've all met people where it's like, yeah, they're nice, but there's something, I don't know, I really like them, but there's something. And oftentimes this can be, and there's big ways and small ways that this happens, but oftentimes there can be this little trust that's shredded in relationship because the trust with ourselves isn't there fully. Wow. We're only scratching the surface of what is possible here. And so as I look to the future of this podcast and of finding treasures in the trash, I can tell you we have I've already recorded 2 really exciting guests. The first is Mandy Inkbar, who is phenomenal. She was a child actor. She's known for all kinds of things. If you're into like teen drama, she starred in Teen Witch. She was also on Broadway. I think she was the first, I have to double check this, but I think she might have been the first actor to she plays the young girl in Brighton Beach Memoirs. I think. I'm going to have to fact check that. But she definitely started her career on Broadway. She ended up, through her own sort of spiritual volition, having a lot of awakenings, which you'll hear about on the podcast. But she ended up becoming a prolific yoga teacher. She teaches Jennifer Aniston and Kate Hudson, to name a small few of a long list of celebrities. And now she does astrology. I've had a reading from her and it was phenomenal. And in that podcast, we're going to dive very deep into our looks and how our looks and what we can do to ourselves when we're sort of pushing back these feelings about how we look, among other things. And then I also have recorded today the incredible Scott Duffy, who is just beyond the beyond in terms of what he's done with his life. He started off in very early days in sort of the late 80s, early 90s with Tony Robbins, and was there during the Fire Walk with Me days. If anyone knows what that is, that's when Tony Robbins would train people, and then at the end they would walk on hot coals. He helped to found really the first internet browser, and then he had a life in tech before starting a company that he sold to Virgin and Richard Branson. And then he had this huge crash in his life, which he talks about, and now he's kind of like a phoenix in the ashes. Has a company called AI Mavericks, and he's in Forbes top 10 public speakers, and he's writing books, and you just have to hear what he has to say about AI. I don't want to give it away, but I will say that when you look at finding treasures in the trash, talk about some really big trash, right? All the shadow that lurks and looms in AI, and he just really gives us a glide path to the treasure. So it's super exciting. That's just a couple teasers on who we're going to have on the podcast. And my goal is to give you one podcast a month of really quality guests. And if I don't have one, I'll give you really, really quality content. That's my goal. And it's all centered on this idea, right? That what we disown, what we don't want to look at, what's hard to look at, that the growth and the real breakthroughs in life about ourselves live in those places. And so, as Amy said, moving forward, we're going to put on our gloves, we're going to put on our booties, our little booty shoe covers, and we're going to dive into the trash, not only the shadow trash, but the trash of life, the trash in the world, and we're going to find the treasure. We're going to look for the treasure. We're going to compost those places that feel scary, whether it's in the career front or the interpersonal front or the spiritual front. And we're going to turn them inside out. And so, my company is called Brave Directions. And what it says on my homepage is that to get where you want on the outside, you have to go inside. I'm really looking forward to doing this work with you. I learn every time I do a podcast, and I am incredibly honored and incredibly grateful to do the work I do. Find me on Magic Thread Media. starting in February. And I'm sure you'll see a lot of trailers between now and then on I don't want to call it a new podcast. It's like an evolution of Finding Treasures in the Trash. My name is Cari Jacobs-Crovetto, and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for listening.
I want to thank each and every one of you for being here as we explore what it really means to create magic at work. If this conversation resonated with you, or if someone came to mind while you were listening, share the episode with them. Help others who are looking for these types of conversations find us. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate, and review so you're notified when the next episode airs. Until next time, keep edge walking, keep challenging the way things have always been done, and keep making magic at work.
Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to a Magic Thread Media podcast.